From a dome of dryness to learning about shipping lanes, we'll cover it all in the May edition of the Water Resources Outlook.
So let's start with looking at the past 30 days of observed precipitation across the southeast, and we see the heaviest amounts have been across the Florida Peninsula as well as parts of North Carolina and Virginia, where amounts have exceeded 5+ inches there in the red color. Lighter amounts are evident across Alabama and Georgia, as well as the Florida Panhandle, with some areas receiving less than 2 inches, shown there by the green colors, over the past 30 days. As we zoom out a little, we see this arc of precipitation from eastern Texas, where they have seen quite a bit of flooding, and up through the mid-Mississippi Valley and Ohio Valley and into the mid-Atlantic. And this is where our storm track has been primarily, with a dome of dryness across the southeast. So the benefits are we have seen limited flooding here in the later spring across the southeast, but now we're also seeing some precipitation deficits. Here's the 30-day deficits, and again, that dome of dryness there you see in the yellow colors indicating deficits of 1, 2, and even 3 inches in the past 30 days. Central Florida has seen some of the pretty heavier amounts this last week, and that is that purple 4+ area C. Is this the beginning of the wet season, you may ask? It's hard to say. We do know that based on some studies from the National Weather Service in Melbourne, that parts of Central Florida do begin their wet season right about now on average, but also know that this can deviate between May and June. Looking at the more telling year-to-date rainfall departures, we see after the very wet late fall and early winter that we are now with deficits for the year across parts of the southern Appalachians. Parts of North Georgia, North Alabama, and upstate South Carolina and North Carolina now showing 5+ inch deficits since the beginning of the year. So how has this translated to stream flow? We see below normal 28-day stream flows now across parts of North Georgia and northern Alabama into upstate South Carolina. On the flip side, we see above normal stream flows across central Florida and parts of North Carolina and Virginia, and those areas that have seen wetness here in late spring outside of the dome of dryness. And so with that dome of dryness and looking at those deficits since the beginning of the year, drought now creeping into parts of North Georgia. This is the latest drought monitor released today, and we see now moderate drought conditions are being depicted across the northern third of Georgia, as well as small parts of northern Alabama and South Carolina and western North Carolina there in the light orange color. So now Georgia seeing about 27% of the state in moderate drought. This is the first time we've seen this much drought in the state since fall of 2015. As far as flood climatology, we're in week 20, one of the quietest weeks typically for flooding in the southeast. But for the Florida Peninsula rivers, the wet season is beginning, and that brings an increase in river flooding and later an even greater increased river flood threat with the potential for tropical systems. Todd will talk more on the future outlook for precipitation as well as our tropical season briefing.
All right, let's take a look at what we can expect for the next week or so across the southeast U.S. We're beginning the short-term period with an area of low pressure developing off to our southwest, and the short-term period is going to be mainly characterized by that area of low pressure moving northeastward across the area. By the time we get to Sunday, we're currently expecting the system to be just offshore with high pressure moving in behind it. Going into the midterm period, models are hinting at the upper level low cutting off from the upper level circulation, which means that that surface low probably not move a whole lot at the beginning of the midterm period. Probably mean that we'll still continue to get some rain in coastal North Carolina and up into Virginia, but otherwise across the area we have high pressure behind that system. As we go through the midterm period, we will eventually see that low off the coast move northeastward, and then high pressure also move eastward across the area. That will allow precipitation associated with another low pressure system to the west to start moving into the area. Looking at the 7-day precipitation forecast, the vast majority of this rain that we have forecast here we're expecting in the short-term period. And then with that high pressure in the midterm period, not as much rain towards the middle part of next week. Looking at the long-term outlook, we're expecting above normal precipitation amounts across much of the area, and this is mainly associated with that second area of low pressure that we saw just to our west at the end of the midterm period.
We continue to talk about ENSO conditions in the Central Pacific. We focus on the Niño 3.4 region. One thing that I learned recently is how these regions are named. They are shipping lanes, and since ships move through those areas on a regular basis, data was easier to come by. Since 1 and 2 are so close and small, they were combined. The Niño 3.4 region is just a combination of the Niño 3 and 4 and can be described as the most ENSO representative. So now that we understand where the regions come from, let's look at the forecast for ENSO. We are quickly headed out of El Niño and may be barreling through the neutral conditions and into La Niña as we get into late summer. Our seasonal forecast will reflect that, as you will see next. First, the June rainfall forecast from the Climate Prediction Center. June looks to be wet across much of the southeast, excluding the Atlantic coast and Florida. However, with respect to Florida, we are heading into their wet season, and in the last few days, we have seen some pretty heavy rains over parts of Central and South Florida. Also, something we will have to watch when we have late spring rainfall as we approach the summer convection season. We tend to have more widespread convective rainfall during the June and sometimes the July time frame. We almost always seem to have pop-up thunderstorms during that time, and as we go through summer, but with late spring rainfall, it seems there is much more to work with, much more water to work with, and more widespread and heavier rainfall. Again, something we will have to watch. We move on to the seasonal forecast of precipitation. Right now, the summer looks to have equal chances for above normal, near normal, and below normal precipitation. As we move through the neutral conditions for ENSO, it is very difficult to tell how it will impact our rainfall during this time. Guess that means you have to come back next month and listen again to see how our summer is shaping up and if we do see a wet or dry pattern developing. Because we are likely switching to La Niña and approaching hurricane season, Florida and the Atlantic coast remain in equal chances, while the inland and western portions of the southeast are hinting at below normal for the September, October, and November time frame. However, there is a lot more certainty in the temperature forecast for the next 9 months. The Climate Prediction Center has much better skill with temperature forecast, and you can see here for the summer, chances are much better for above normal precipitation. That trend continues for the fall and through the bulk of that the hurricane season this year, and then doesn't stop as we move through winter. Higher temperatures would likely mean higher evapotranspiration rates, which could help push parts of the southeast into drought conditions. Obviously, rainfall and precipitation play the largest part in determining drought, but temperature can push us one way or the other. So, the bottom line, in the short term, Chris mentioned some rain early and then a bit of a break over the next 4 or 5 days for much of the southeast. And then again, another chance for rain as we get low pressure kind of creeping back into the area. Summer convection season is right around the corner. It already seems to have started somewhat in Florida, but right now we're still getting frontal systems through the southeast, especially around that core of dryness. That core of dryness seems to have broken up just a little bit, that dome, and so it looks like we're getting a little bit more rainfall across the rest of the southeast. As for the long term, the summer, as we mentioned before, above normal temperatures, and our El Nino to La Nina, kind of that switch. The rainfall right now looks to remain near normal. Like I said, not leaning us one way or the other, so we're looking for at least normal for this time. We'll have to see as we approach the summer, with the potential for the convective season to maybe be a little bit more active if we're rainy over the next couple of days. Our next water resource outlook will be a live hurricane season call. We'll make sure and send out that information in the preceding week before that. It'll be on June 22nd, and we'll send out that information so that everybody can join us live and we can have a kind of a live early hurricane season briefing. Possible we're already in hurricane season, we could see a hurricane by then. So we'll look forward to that and hope you'll be there. I want to thank you for joining us for the Water Resources Outlook for May. As always, if you have any questions, you can contact me, Jeff, or Chris, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. We thank you again for listening and look forward to talking to you all next month.